okay, you know what, we'll just let them reconstitute what they had for the purposes of going after us again. So that's not going to happen, and they shouldn't let it happen.
If the Israelis want to perpetuate ongoing offensive hostilities against Iran forever, that's on them. You know what I mean? I'm not Israeli, you're not Israeli. We're Americans, right? Do you think that's a good idea? Or do you think we should just have a strategy that says we're attacking the Iranians forever and ever because the regime's not collapsing, they're not going to stop trying to have an army, they're not going to stop trying to have the capability to project power. So the only options are to attack them forever or to have some sort of endgame that gets us extricated from this conflict. Which one of those are you for, Scott?
Well, I think you're being a little dramatic.
In today's video, Josh Rogin humiliates Scott Jennings on Newsnight with Abby Phillip as a heated clash erupts over the escalating Israel-Iran conflict, rising global energy prices, and major questions about US involvement. Josh Rogin presses Scott Jennings on conflicting claims about whether the US had prior knowledge of the strikes, exposing serious gaps in transparency and accountability as tensions spiral. So let's dive in and watch how Josh Rogin shuts down Scott Jennings on Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
I think it actually is very important whether or not the United States was given a heads up on a huge escalation by the Israelis that's attacking Iranian oil infrastructure, which resulted in retaliatory attacks on Gulf infrastructure, which is tanking the world economy and affecting the pocketbooks of every American citizen. So, yeah, I would like to know. And it's pretty clear that the White House put out opposite signals. Earlier, they said they were putting out to reporters that they were briefed and it was part of a means to pressure the Iranians to open the Strait of Hormuz. Guess what? That didn't work. The Iranians escalated. And then later, Trump said that he didn't know. And then the Israelis leaked that he did know. So, yeah, I think it's worth figuring it out. But it just goes to show you, as President Trump has said, as Tulsi Gabbard testified today, U.S. and Israel are on different pages. They're operating from different objectives. They want different outcomes. They have different estimations of how long the war should last. They have different targets. And that's a problem. That's a huge problem.
I think to piggyback a little bit on your point, it highlights one of the greater problems people have. Because even if Democrats, as they should say that Iran's naval capacity has been decimated. One of the largest sponsors of terror has been depleted. Their ballistic missiles have been depleted. I mean, all of those things can be successes as you're talking about what the military objectives are. What we still don't know is what the cost is, what the human cost is going to be. We don't know what the cost to everyday Americans is going to be. We don't know if we're going to have to put boots on the ground. And all of us around the table, if we're intellectually honest, we know that if one of our objectives is to go in and make sure that they don't have the ability to have a nuclear program, we're going to have to put boots on the ground to achieve that. So I think that what we want and what most people want and what most average everyday Americans want is, while it's taking us more dollars at the tank to fill up our gas tanks every single day just to do our nominal task, we want to have clarity. We want transparency and we want honesty. Like, even if you were to say, which I said at the beginning of this statement, about the successes of some of the military objectives, true. The question is, what is the off-ramp? We thought at the beginning of this, we'd be out of this by now. And what is the cost? And no one's been able to articulate that at all.
So one of the parts of this that kind of merges what you're both saying on this either side of the table, if we are not the ones driving the tempo and the escalation of this war, and in fact Israel is, this is a question that was posed to the Secretary of Defense today. Why are we helping Israel prosecute this war if they're going to pursue their own objectives? And here is what Pete Hegseth said.
We hold the cards. We have objectives. Those objectives are clear. We have allies pursuing objectives as well. And the truth speaks for itself. I mean, President Trump was very clear about that. Iran has weaponized energy for decades. Israel clearly sent a warning, and POTUS has made it clear, very clear. Iran knows when you hit Karg Island and you hit military capabilities on Karg Island, which is the only thing we hit, we can hold anything at issue, anything. The United States military controls the fate of that country. Iran has the ability to make the right choices. It should not, going forward, target Arab allies, Arab countries, trying to create pain, the pain that they created themselves.
I think, Scott, you would call that a word salad.
What really stands out is how messy things get when allies aren't fully aligned, especially in a conflict this sensitive. Historically, even close partnerships like the US and Israel have had moments where their strategic goals didn't perfectly match. Think back to disagreements during the Iraq War or over settlement policies. When that gap shows up during active military escalation, it creates confusion not just for policymakers, but for markets, allies, and everyday people trying to understand what's actually happening. There's also a bigger issue here around escalation control. Once energy infrastructure becomes a target, you're no longer dealing with a contained regional conflict. You're dealing with something that hits the global economy almost instantly. Roughly a fifth of the world's oil supply moves through the Strait of Hormuz, so any disruption there sends shockwaves everywhere. We've already seen how quickly prices react, and that trickles down into higher transportation costs, food prices, and overall inflation. That's why clarity from leadership matters so much. Mixed messaging in a moment like this isn't just political noise, it has real-world consequences. And then there's the question nobody seems to be answering clearly. What's the end game? Military analysts have warned for years that degrading capabilities is one thing, but sustaining long-term deterrence without a political or diplomatic strategy is a completely different challenge. Without a defined off-ramp, conflicts tend to drag on, and that's where mission creep kicks in. If the US isn't fully in control of the pace or direction, that raises serious concerns about how this plays out and who ultimately bears the cost.
I'm not sure what he's saying there. And what is the answer to the question? Are we controlling the tempo, or is Israel controlling the tempo?
Well, look, the president said today we're coordinating, we're allies here, but it's perfectly reasonable to believe that we do have different objectives here. Our objectives, I don't think, have really changed. We don't want them to export terror. We don't want them to have nuclear missiles. We've taken out the Navy. And these are our objectives. Israel has to live with this in the neighborhood. And Israel, of course, for them, this is the finishing off of what was done to them on October the 7th, which will never happen again. So it's reasonable. It's reasonable for us to have different objectives.
Is the answer to the question that Israel does what it wants and we just have to live with it? Because that's the question the world is asking themselves. If Israel decides to continue moving up the escalation ladder, attacking energy, retaliatory attacks, that's not just Israel's problem anymore. That's the whole world's problem suddenly.
Well, look, it sounded to me today like President Trump was not happy about this strike, and it sounded like Prime Minister Netanyahu got the message. So, look, my anticipation is that we're heavily influential to them. We don't run them, and they don't run us. We're allies, but they don't control us. And I don't know that we necessarily control them.
We're the senior partner. They're the junior partner. We have the weapons. We give them the weapons. We're funding this war. We're the great power. They're our client state. So in theory, we should be able to have the more than a 50% say in whether American blood and treasure is spent to perpetuate this war for months and months. And it's pretty clear from what President Trump said today that the war, he wants to get out very soon. He keeps saying it. And he wants to get out very soon. And it's pretty clear from what Netanyahu said today that he doesn't want to get out very soon.
Well,
so both of those people can't win. One of them is going to be right and one of them is going to be wrong. So who's going to win that disagreement? Is it going to be Trump and we're going to end the war soon? Or is it going to be Bibi and the war is going to go on for a very long time? Both of them can't be right, Scott. And in the end, we're going to find out who really wears the pants in this bromance.
Well, look, the bottom line is that Israel cannot exist, will not exist, has said they won't exist any longer with an Iranian state that is funding terror proxies and committing the kind of atrocities against Israel that we saw on October the 7th. They have wiped out the terror proxies for the most part. They're continuing that against Hezbollah now. But Israel is not in a position to say, okay, you know what, we'll just let them reconstitute what they had for the purposes of going after us again. So that's not going to happen, and they shouldn't let it happen.
If the Israelis want to perpetuate ongoing offensive hostilities against Iran forever, that's on them. You know what I mean? I'm not Israeli, you're not Israeli. We're Americans, right? Do you think that's a good idea? Or do you think we should just have a strategy that says we're attacking the Iranians forever and ever because the regime's not collapsing, they're not going to stop trying to have an army, they're not going to stop trying to have the capability to project power. So the only options are to attack them forever or to have some sort of end game that gets us extricated from this conflict. Which one of those are you for, Scott?
Well, I think you're being a little dramatic.
The biggest issue here isn't just disagreement, it's the growing gap between strategy and reality. When allies operate with different timelines and objectives, history shows things spiral fast. Look at past conflicts where coordination broke down, like early phases of the Iraq War. Mixed messaging led to prolonged instability and unclear endgames. That same pattern is starting to show again, especially when escalation hits critical infrastructure like oil facilities, which immediately drags the global economy into the fight whether countries want it or not. There's also the economic side people tend to downplay. Roughly 20% of the world's oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz, so any disruption there isn't regional, it's global. Even limited strikes can spike energy prices overnight, and we've already seen how sensitive markets are to Middle East instability. That translates directly into higher gas prices, shipping costs, and inflation back home. So when there's no clear communication or consistency about what the US knew or intended, it creates uncertainty that markets and everyday people end up paying for in very real ways. And beyond economics, there's the long-term strategic risk. If the US isn't clearly setting the pace, it raises serious questions about who actually is. Conflicts without defined exit strategies tend to drag on. Just look at how Afghanistan stretched into a 20-year war despite initial limited goals. Without a clear off-ramp or aligned objectives, this isn't just about supporting an ally anymore. It's about potentially getting pulled into a wider, open-ended conflict with consequences that are way harder to control.
No, it's pretty simple.
B, we have significantly
dramatic kind of
degraded the regime. And look, here's the deal.
What's the answer?
The Israeli government cannot allow Iran to ever be in a position again to do to them what they did on October the 7th. It cannot happen. They do have some different experience than we do on this front. And so if they have to finish that job to their satisfaction, that needs to happen. But that's different than what we're doing there, which I think is being a good partner. But Israel has to live with it, and they did live with it, and we shouldn't expect them to have to live with it again.
Look, so there's such a thing as things that you can't take back, right? And one of those things is actually destroying resources. And here's Mohammed Al-Aryan, he's a famed economist. This is what he's warning about where this is all headed. It's not just tit for tat and war, long-term damage. Listen.
My main concern, as you know, Sandra, is we've gone from disruptions to energy infrastructure to damage to energy infrastructure. 17% of Qatar's energy infrastructure will not come back online for years. So these are meaningful disruptions that have long-term effects.
And ultimately, that's why, as reasonable as what Scott is saying, the Israeli position is, the rest of the world has a say in this as well. Energy isn't just a convenience in terms of how much it costs. It's also life and death for a lot of people who rely on it. And that's what's at stake here.
Energy independence is independence and energy freedom is freedom. First, I would like to say, I mean, there's so much chatter online in particular that Trump is just Bibi Netanyahu's puppet. Clearly, he's very comfortable saying exactly what he thinks and exactly what he wants to see. And I would say Netanyahu's been fairly deferential if you watch
just after
interviews,
the fact. I think that's
if you
the
watch
problem.
but I
not,
think
not before,
he's setting the tone moving forward. But I think Trump certainly has a much more global picture in mind. He's cultivated deep relationships, certainly in the Gulf region. I think he has a very good pulse and is recognizing, of course, that oil base that was destroyed there in Qatar. It's a significant degradation of their energy capacity. So I think he's well aware of that. I mean, it's interesting to note the Gulf countries have committed to invest a lot in the U.S. That has not changed. And they still seem to be quite aligned with the Trump administration. So I think he's looking out for America's interests. And I think that's absolutely what he should be doing.
I mean, I think it's that last point that you just made. That's a whole new other question mark is what is the future of Middle East investment and where are they going from here? Because their economy has basically been shut down for the last 3 weeks. And how much longer can they take that and still invest the kinds of things that they've promised all across the globe? To be continued. But next for us,
A big takeaway is how much the focus stays on short-term wins while brushing past the long-term consequences. History shows that weakening a regime militarily doesn't automatically bring stability. In fact, after the Iraq War, taking out key infrastructure and leadership created power vacuums that led to years of chaos and insurgency. That same pattern is a real concern here. You can knock out capabilities, but without a clear political strategy afterward, instability tends to grow rather than shrink over time, creating deeper regional instability and long-term unintended consequences for everyone involved. Then there's the economic reality that's impossible to ignore. When energy infrastructure gets hit, it's not just a regional issue. It becomes global almost instantly. Around a fifth of the world's oil supply moves through the Strait of Hormuz, so even limited disruptions can drive up fuel prices, shipping costs, and inflation worldwide. And when experts warn that damaged facilities could take years to recover, that signals deeper long-term pressure on everyday people, not just a temporary spike that fades away quickly. On top of that, the lack of a clear endgame raises serious questions. If the mission is limited, there should be a defined exit strategy, but right now it feels open-ended. Conflicts without clear objectives tend to drag on far longer than expected, just like the war in Afghanistan. Without coordination among allies or a realistic off-ramp, what starts as a targeted operation can easily turn into a prolonged engagement where the costs, both financial and human, keep growing with no clear resolution in sight. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.